When Atlus announced Soul Hackers 2, it came as a bit of a shock to me initially since it was announced during the Persona 25th anniversary, and I never really thought we'd get a sequel to Soul Hackers 1. Needless to say, I was still pretty excited to play Soul Hackers 2 since I never got a chance to play the first one, and I really didn't have to in order to understand what was going on in Soul Hackers 2. But I want you to take from this review is how I view the game coming in from a clean slate, as I haven't experienced the first, and I'll have no preconceived notions on if it's bad or good from prior experience. We'll examine the gameplay, the story, the characters, and I'll provide a final verdict at the end of the video. This will also be totally spoiler free, so don't worry. Now let's go ahead and get started. So this is actually the part of the game I liked the least in my blind playthrough, and I'll explain why. The combat system I felt just wasn't as good as it could have been coming off Atlus work with Shin Megami Tensei 5 and Persona 5, which both had fantastic combat. You have to build stacks, which are essentially one more from the Persona series, for lack of a better comparison, and you can build a higher level stack when you exploit an enemy's weakness. You can keep building this up quite high if you have the proper demons to exploit the enemy of which you're facing. Once you reach the final round, the new Sabbath mechanic will be triggered. Rinko will command the demons to hit all of the enemy party members, dealing damage to them. Having fewer enemies will ensure greater damage is dealt to your targets. Similarly, having more stack will ensure higher damage from the Sabbath. There are ways to increase the numbers on the stack or even get special skills that will be triggered during the Sabbath. Yoshitsunde, for example, has Sabbath Striker, which can be triggered under certain circumstances, and it will deal out high levels of damage initially, and then a secondary strike will occur, providing additional area of effect damage. The affinity chart of the game has been simplified, only featuring fire, ice, electricity, force, and ruin, as well as almighty. Physical skills are also paired with gunfire, and ruin skills in particular are able to deal damage while simultaneously afflicting certain ailments. Aside from the elements, there are different forms of skills that can activate in certain aspects of battle. Commander skills have a cooldown period, but neither cost MP or a party member's turn to use. Tandem skills are demon-oriented skills, where one may be activated during a Sabbath. All this being said, one thing I didn't like was that there wasn't a pass option like in previous entries. It is possible I may have overlooked this in my playthrough since I ran it blind, but I thought this would be rather easy to implement and keep it consistent with other titles in Megaten. I realize this may be a small nitpick, but that is my opinion on this matter. Another issue I had with the game was the dungeon level design. It seemed rather bare bones as you just went through a series of hallways and had enemies randomly pop up for battles, which you could also clearly avoid with just a common slash attack. For me, this may have been made especially boring and tedious in order to make users buy the item pack DLC, which I'll have a little bit more on that later. I was ultimately left unimpressed due to the lack of detail to the dungeons, and in my opinion, this aspect of the game just felt like it was rushed given the quick turnaround time from the announcement trailer to the game's final release. Another common factor in the dungeons in this game is the sheer amount of teleportation mazes. If you can recall Amala Temple from Nocturne, I was having flashbacks while playing, and while it was not quite as bad as Nocturne, it was still a little annoying for me considering how much better the area exploration was in SMT5 and Persona 5. It just feels like a step backwards. Again, I will attribute this to rush development, or at least it feels that way to me. Another aspect of the gameplay which I feel is important to note is the use of the Soul Matrix in Soul Hackers 2. Think of this as your social link integration into the Soul Hackers universe. The way this works is you explore a very techy looking dungeon maze. You can obtain items with your Demon Recon, and also learn more about the characters of which you explore, being Milady, Arrow, and Saizo. The deeper and deeper you go, you'll fight high-level demons, and you have to have a certain soul level, which again you can tie this to a social link leveling in a Persona game. As you defeat these higher-level demons, you can also fuse them, and learn more about the personal struggles of each character, providing a nice layer of character development to the members of your party. As I had mentioned earlier, the Soul Matrix is also plagued with tedious and boring design, unfortunately. None of the puzzles are really super hard, thankfully, and you can get through the floors quickly enough provided you have leveled correctly. Without spoiling, I do recommend you make the journey to the end of each matrix, as it is worth it to do so in this game. One thing I really did like was the use of the Comp Smith. The shop in the Mansei realm is run by Terra, who provides an added flair to your shopping experience. Terra can apply modifications useful for battles such as an increasing attack or decreasing MP costs, or skills like Pick Me Up, which increase the chance of obtaining items from defeated enemies, which can grant valuable benefits for exploration. There is also commander skills exclusively available to Ringo's comp. Rarely customize your comp to suit your individual style, such as stack optimization or changing out demons in battle for your party and Ringo. There are also two other shops in Shinsanto in order to buy accessories, and the other is Bar Hydron, where Ringo and her allies can all hang out together. These interactions where they converse and drink together are called hangout events, and completing them boosts your soul level with a given ally. Soul levels represent the level of mutual understanding between your allies, and I highly recommend not skipping out on this during your playthroughs. There's also the shop to get your side quests called Club Cretaceous, where Madame Ginkgo will provide a glut of side quests, to which you may even find to be overwhelming like I did. The last point I want to touch on is demon fusion in this game. The ability to fuse demons won't be available from the start of the game, this will be unlocked as you progress through the main storyline. Fortunately, it doesn't take long, and Arrow will bring you to the Ropo realm just a few hours after you start playing. Here, he will introduce you to Victor, a man of science that runs the Cirque de Gumaden and knows how to fuse demons. After you enter the circus, you'll get a chance to talk with Victor and more importantly to fuse demons. When fusing demons, you can select the skills that the new demon will inherit from the base ones. To always get the best possible options, I recommend you register your demons in the compendium regularly. When doing that, you'll overwrite their base stats with up-to-date info, so it is essential to register demons regularly after you level them and acquired new skills, even if it costs you some money. This way, you'll be able to select the more recent and powerful skills you've unlocked during your playthrough rather than the base ones. You can also get new demons by forging contracts with them, which leads me to my next point. The demon negotiations, or the lack thereof in this game. One of my favorite parts of the Shin Megami Tensei franchise has been trying to negotiate with demons, and then only to find out that in Soul Hackers 2, they stripped us down to having the demons just come on board as long as you agree with whatever their demands are at this time. While I understand this may have been frustrating to newer players, to have demons become this submissive is not the move for the future of Shin Megami Tensei games, and really left me feeling disappointed. I also really can't understate how much I hated this aspect of Soul Hackers 2. There are also two more points I want to go over before we get into the story. The first being is that the soundtrack of the game is absolutely on point. The Atlus sound team really never misses in my opinion, and even with some of the tedious points in the game, the soundtrack can really pull you through these parts and has a really ambient and techy sound. I really love it, so thanks for doing a good job on this part, Atlus. The second and final point is the level of detail that goes into each city location. I felt it was really well done and drove home the futuristic cyberpunk aesthetic, namely Shinsando and Kamurocho locations. Now that I've holistically covered the gameplay piece, let's go over my thoughts on the story. And don't worry, no spoilers will be discussed at all. So, this is something about the game I actually really liked. The game is set in the mid-21st century, in the not-so-distant future. There's a conflict going on between devil summoners, who live in the shadows of society and use the powers of demons to fight their battles. These two devil summoner organizations in the game are the Phantom Society and the Adagarasu. Another entity, Aeon, quietly watches over the world of humanity. A sentient data collective born beyond the periphery of technology as an entity transcending human intelligence. Aeon one day detects and observes that the end of the world is approaching. Ringo and Fig, agents of Ion, and individually autonomous splinters of its mind, are brought into the human world to stop its inevitable destruction. Their objective is to locate and protect two individuals necessary to stop the world's end. However, they soon discover that both individuals have already been killed. Ringo executes Aeon's special ability Soul Hack to bring one of them back from the dead, and then the other devil summoners killed for reasons unknown. Joining forces with these devil summoners, given a second chance at life, with their own motives pertaining to their own deaths, Ringo and Fig must uncover the truth behind the world's end. I feel it's important to know that Ringo's relationship with each of the summoners, Arrow, Melody, and Saizo, is well paced, and you can learn about each summoner and the hardships that they've had to face in their trials and tribulations via the Soul Matrix. You gain an understanding for their motives and their behavior. My personal favorite of the party was Saizo, and he has a very interesting backstory and how it all ties into the main plotline. And to that end, each summoner you really feel attached to by the end of the game, and that's something I felt was missing from the last Atlus release, Shin Megami Tensei 5. I also really liked the game's antagonist, Iron Mask, and thought that the character made a nice addition to Soul Hackers 2. This also includes the battles associated with him, as I also think that they didn't feel too easy or too hard on normal difficulty. After I had completed the main story of the game, since I didn't bother to buy any of the Day 1 DLC, I felt that the pacing and the character development was about as good as I could have hoped for a spin-off from a non-mainline game, and I think you will too if you give it a chance. The cast just seems to mesh well with each other, and the dialogue doesn't seem forced at all. To add to this, I also like the character designs as they fit well with the game's aesthetic, and it seems the community agrees with me to that end based on social media interactions. The art style of the game seems to also work with characters better than it would have if they had done it in the same design of SMT5. Again, this is purely just my opinion, but I think it works for the game, so good job on this, Atlus. However, the fact of the matter is, I had a lot of fun with this game, and I definitely think that part of the problem was that it was so poorly marketed that there just wasn't a lot of hype or excitement for it to come out. It's such a shame that it had to release so close to Xenoblade 3 and the Persona 5 Royal Remaster multi-platform release, otherwise more people might have given it a shot. That said, Soul Hackers 2 is not a masterpiece, nor is it a bad game. It is a good experience, and it'd be a nice entry point for people who are looking to get into Megaten. I also hope that Atlus does away with the Day 1 DLC for future releases, as the Demon DLC and the Story Add-on DLC came off as greedy in my opinion. My game of the year for 2022 is still Elden Ring, and my rating for Soul Hackers 2, I give it a 7.5 out of 10. That'll conclude my review on Soul Hackers 2. If you enjoyed this review, please like and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next video. Snarf Soldier 17, out.